expectations of you. I know this is really common in brown culture because, like, traditionally, like, brown kids do be going through some shit when it comes to, like, their parents saying you have to be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer or nothing. Although you go on the street and you go and you're not my son.
Yeah.
You're not my daughter anymore.
Not my beta.
You are not my beta nor my beti.
Yeah. Welcome back
to
the
the
podcast.
what podcast?
Talking out loud.
What? You don't even know
Thinking
what
out
it's
loud.
called. Yeah, thinking out loud.
Teehee.
Teehee, motherfucker. This is our first actual podcast.
Yeah, the first official one, episode 1.
I'm nervous.
I'm not.
You're not?
No.
So I don't know, you, actually, let's talk about that for a second. You didn't even listen to my full podcast.
No,
No,
I listened to
it's like 30 minutes long.
I listened to half of it.
So 15 minutes is all you could spare for me.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you listen to, like, the bros on podcasts and TikTok for
I don't
hours.
actually even listen to those all the way through either. I've become you. I can only listen to short form content.
Oh, the ADHD journey begins.
It's contagious.
Yeah. Anyway, it's better on this side, trust me. But that being said, welcome back to the Thinking Out Loud podcast. This is our first official episode after creating this on a whim.
On a whim. Yeah.
In Portugal on a rainy as day. I asked on my social media what people wanted us to talk about, and because we have like two people that know us, I had like that many people respond. I think I had like around 20 people in total respond. I had different ideas on what people wanted for us to talk about. One of the topics were perfectionism and why it's unhelpful. The other ones were our relationship tips and advice. Some of the things are like our vegan story, our vegan life, like why we went vegan. And then there was something else. I don't remember what it was.
Was it an other panel to suggest something? Was it like an other panel to suggest something? Or travel or...
Oh, I think it was travel. It was like our travel experience, yeah. And so after, out of all of those, people were interested in the perfectionism one the most, which is so cool because I'm an expert on perfectionism. Not in like the clinical sense, but like in the lived experience sense.
Yeah, lots of experience.
And I thought it would be interesting for us to talk about this because you and I never thought that you struggled with perfectionism. We always thought it was like just me. But recently, I don't know, we've kind of spoken about that a bit more.
Looking into what perfectionism is a little bit more as well kind of helped me figure out if I do have some elements of that, and I think I do. I still don't know if it's the same as you. It shows up in different ways, and I guess it does affect me. It's probably the same, really. I don't know. It's hard. It definitely affects me differently, but to the same degree, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
maybe.
I think it's something that's hard to measure because it's not a diagnosis, firstly, and not that we should be pathologizing any normal human emotion or patterns of behaviors.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or shouldn't be pathologizing everything. But I think that, like you said, it affects different people in different ways and it shows up differently. Yeah, so I think that'll be really interesting for us to delve into. We thought that we would jump into the topic of today, and like, although there's a topic, I feel like it's just going to go very organically, it's going to flow, and if we go on tangents, that's okay, because this is not about being perfect.
Exactly.
This episode is not about being perfect. This whole podcast is not about being perfect. And I actually wanted to make this point when we had our first episode, is that this whole project of like this podcast is actually such a major challenge for me because I am someone that wants things to be perfect before I put them out there, which is bizarre because firstly, this is the main point of this whole episode, is there is no such thing as perfect. Let's just put that out there. There is no such thing as perfect. It's fake. Like it does not exist.
Exactly.
Can you hear that? He stopped barking.
The microphone was held to Bax's mouth, but he did not bark.
He did not.
He has been doing tiny little barks ever since we mentioned him. Yeah, like that, like a little cough.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the topic. It is perfectionism.
Yeah.
That is our theme for this podcast, and like Tesh said, we may stray from that, but that's essentially our loose little theme here, and that's what we're going to talk about. Yeah, we want to define that and discuss that and how that affects different people.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Alright, welcome to the next day, because we got interrupted, and we're continuing the podcast the next day.
Yes, smooth transition. This has been edited so well. But yes, it is actually, it's more than 24 hours,
It's
isn't
like 2 days later.
Yeah, 2 days later. Hello. Beginning again.
Wait, no, it was yesterday.
Was it?
No, because no, it wasn't.
No, it was Thursday.
Yeah.
Because we had a day off.
Yeah.
Anzac Day.
By Anzac Bay.
Yeah.
Yeah, bless up. That's what I said.
You did say that. We hadn't really got started with the topic, which is great.
We really
just did
hadn't.
a little introduction and sort of a catch up on what we've been doing. But now we can get straight, pretty much pick up where we left off, which is the beginning of the episode, which is the subject of this episode, which is perfectionism.
Amazing. Okay, so why are we talking about this?
You want me to answer that?
Yeah, I'm talking to you.
So why are we talking about this?
We're having a conversation, brother. You have to respond to me. We're not...
I thought you were just saying that and then you were going to lead. So
No.
why are we talking about perfectionism?
Yeah, like, why are we talking about this?
Well, it was voted for on a poll, first of all. What do you want us to talk about? Perfectionism was the number one thing. But it's something that affects lots of different people. In fact, it affects everyone. But it presents in a lot of different ways. And to some people, they don't actually know that they are a perfectionist at something.
And I think one of the most important things like that I've noticed is that our society and culture very much glamorizes perfectionism and glorifies it, and it's very much seen, especially in the workforce, it's seen as a badge of honor. Like, it's seen as something to flex, it's seen as something to be proud of. And it's like, I just have really high standards for things, and I just really like things done right and well and the way that I want, and if it's not up to my standards, I'm not happy. But the sort of trap or that difficulty with that sort of mindset is that you tend to have a very rigid and I suppose strict way of looking at things, and so there comes a point where nothing's really good enough and nothing lives up to your expectations, whether that's things that you do or things that others do as well. So it's like it affects you as an individual in your own life, and it also affects how you interact with other people, and like has an impact on the quality of your relationships if you're externalizing some of those beliefs. And so so I think it's a really fascinating topic, and I think like you said, so many of us struggle with this, or have these characteristics. And not that we should be pathologizing it, but it's good to know, because then you can kind of keep track of, when is this trait helping me or in my favor, and when is this trait actually to my detriment.
Yeah, definitely. I think I want to come back to something you said there, but first, I think it's good to define some terms, specifically what perfectionism is. So I actually looked up the definition. So it's a refusal to accept any standard short of perfection, striving for flawlessness and setting exceedingly high standards, with a tendency to be overly critical or have overly critical evaluations. So I think that's a pretty clear-cut definition. But I did want to come back to something you were saying about perfectionism and how that can affect your relationships, because I think your relationships in terms of others and then obviously with yourself, having really high standards and seeming like a flex is something I wanted to touch on, because I think that's a big thing in a lot of workplaces. A lot of people will say, I'm just a perfectionist, like I can't do this, and then they think it's a strength, but then you hold those very high standards over others and over yourself, and in like 9 times out of 10 those situations, you're never satisfied, not with your work or anyone else's. You're always, like the definition says, you've got exceedingly high standards and you're overly critical of everything. So there's no way perfection, you can't achieve perfectionism. Perfection.
This is it. What is fundamentally wrong with perfectionism is that there's no such thing as perfection. There's literally no such thing as flawlessness. It just doesn't exist. We live in a flawed world. We are flawed creatures, and the world is constantly changing and evolving. So there's no such thing as perfect. How can you measure that? How can something be flawless? It's a subjective perception as well.
Exactly, yeah.
Anyway, so back to what you were saying.
No, I think that's kind of covered a lot of what I was trying to say.
Oh,
but going back to what I was saying, it's done. But that's a good point as well. Just talking on how something being perfect isn't attainable.
Yeah.
Because if something was perfect, it's without flaw, and that's so subjective because it's based on who's looking at this thing.
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly. So if you could come up with something that you think is, whatever your standards for perfect, for quote unquote perfect are, there's a bunch of people that would think that that's like nowhere near good enough.
Exactly, yeah. And I think about this is such a stupid example, but celebrities, or someone that many people know, and finding certain people attractive. Attraction, there's this is actually an interesting topic as well. This is like a segue. This is not about perfectionism, but I find this super interesting, like the psychology of attraction and how I really want to read. There's a few books on like attraction, and there's certain looks that people believe that is attractive, like a way a certain person looks.
Yeah.
But then I think, well, beauty is subjective, and, you know, facial features and traits differ from country to country, culture to culture, generation to generation.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, like, you know, back in the early 90s or whatever, you know, it was the skinny girl, blonde, blue eyes, and now we've got a very different sort of stereotypical, what's the word I'm looking for?
Like standard of beauty.
Standard of beauty, yes,
Yeah.
yes, like standard, and the standard changes.
It does. It fluctuates through time.
Yeah.
Like how you're going back to the 90s. Like if you go back far enough, like there is what makes someone beautiful. Because it really changes. Like even attraction more so is that people were more attracted to someone who's like overweight or heavy built because it signifies that they have wealth,
yeah,
and an excess of resources,
yeah,
which is that's someone's level of attraction,
literally.
Whereas you know those things change through time, and it's a cultural thing. So
yeah, exactly, and so it's kind of like those are just the standards because it's based on the majority of people.
Yeah.
But does that now imply that people who don't fit within that standard are not beautiful? No. Like, this makes me think of, like, the fact that I grew up always wanting a nose job because I hated how, like, turned my nose was. And I just hated how big it was and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, I want, like, the pretty little, you know, the button nose, like, the gorgeous little baby, which you hate. You hate those little button noses. What did you say to me? I was like, I want this nose that's, like, pointy at the front. And you were like, what?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of those.
I have a witch nose and I hated it. So I was like, but then I saw this post. It was someone that we know. She posted it, and it was like, you know, brown girls or Arab girls or whoever, if you ever want to get your nose done because you want like the Eurocentric beauty standard nose, just remember that women who had noses like these back in like, I don't know, times, you know what I mean, like medieval times or whatever.
Back in history.
Back in those times, they were like considered like goddesses. Like they were considered like the most beautiful, most like sought after, like worshipped women who had these like massive honkers like mine. And I was like, oh, like it just changes. And it's and so like, yeah, so I think like how so many of us, like we get our lips done and we do like certain surgeries or treatments. Like I do them. I got my lips done. And you know, people get their boobs done and all that sort of stuff. And like the BBL trend, and it's like, it's very much following trends. Oh, this is like going down like the psychology of like trends and like how people just follow and
exactly
at what point do you know that a thought is your own? Like at what point do you think like, oh, I want this done because I want this done?
When do you know that you're being influenced?
Is
it you that likes it, or are you just liking it because it's common now, or
then you don't know the difference?
Okay.
Anyway,
that's a whole other subject, but I think coming back to perfectionism, I think we could talk about the different ways that it affects each of us individually. So I guess I could start. So the way, and I didn't really even know that this was something that affected me until we sort of started to, I guess, plan a little bit for this episode and just talk about it.
I legit thought you didn't have perfectionism, and then we talked about it and I was like, oh my god, wait, you do. Like, why am I sitting here thinking you're like a fucking flawless human being?
Thinking
like, genuinely thinking like, oh, George is so perfect, he doesn't struggle with the things I struggle with.
So we both like are affected by this, but in different ways. So I, through planning of this episode and just thinking about perfectionism in general, figured out that there is something, that there is an element of this that affects me, and I think it's more with actually beginning projects or starting things, because I tend to overthink or think things through way too much, and I don't even start things until I know that, like, oh, I'm going to succeed, or I'm going to, that this will go well. And I think that has an element of perfectionism in it, because I won't begin something until I know, like, oh, this is going to work out, this is going to do well, or my plans aren't perfect yet, I need to make sure I do this and this and this before I launch this project or before I start this. So I think that's one of the biggest ways that this affects me. Yeah,
I feel like that's where you struggle with perfectionism, in that way, around starting things. And for me, I have no issue starting things. Like, I am starting a million projects every day. What?
I said yes.
Yeah. And way. Yeah, so I have no issue starting. I actually am a chronic project starter, but I really struggle to see it through to the end. And this has dated back to like even uni, like when I had to do assignments. Yes, it wasn't a project of mine, but it was something that I needed to do. And starting it was fine. I started it and then I could not finish it till like I never handed in my assignments till like the day of, the night of, like 2 minutes before it was due.
Yeah,
like 11:58, sitting on my bed, like stressing,
Stressing,
sweating,
crying,
shitting, screaming,
getting it.
vomiting, pooing my pants, like
Asking for an
asking my
extension on it.
asking my GP for an extension that night, calling him.
Yeah, literally every time you had to hand an
Yeah,
assignment,
and
you
so
got
I feel
extension.
so I feel like for me it was really like, okay, I can start this thing, but I cannot finish it because it's never going to be good enough, so I need to keep trying. And I would always get extensions because I just never thought I had the time. And this is really closely linked with procrastination because procrastination and perfectionism go hand in hand. Like, they are besties. And this is why I never
PPs.
thought that you...
Procrastination,
PPs.
perfect,
Yeah.
PPs.
PPs. This is why I thought you never struggle with perfectionism, because you do not struggle with procrastination. You are amazing at, when you get a task, you start it and you finish it.
Yeah, I think what worked for me in uni, because I would plan them really well and then get them done. Like, I would be able to hand things in like a few days before. I think that's because they were so structured. There was just an easy structure to follow every time.
Do you think it was also because, like, you didn't care as much?
Well, this is where perfectionism, I guess, didn't affect me, or
Yeah.
like my lack of perfectionism in this particular instance worked in my favor, because there was no issue with me like starting, because I was already, first of all, I was studying the subjects, so I kind of had some knowledge. So I'm like, I don't have to learn a bunch before I begin. I can start and work through it. It's part of the process of doing it. But there was already a structure laid out, like, here's what you have to do, this, and so I could just follow those rules, essentially. And where not having perfectionism worked well for me is that I can finish the assignment a few days before it's due, and then just submit it. I'm not going to spend time,
That's wild.
trying to perfect every little bit, and trying to... Like, sometimes I wouldn't even proofread these things. Like,
Oh my
I would
God.
I would just submit. And
Me
even if I
neither,
had...
though, but that was because I had no time to
Yeah.
proofread. Yeah.
Yeah, I had time.
That's wild.
I would have like a few days before, and I'd be like, "No, I'm done with this
So, like,
now."
what
Like,
was going through your head, or like, if you can remember, like, what was going through your mind during that period, like, when you were like, okay, I have this assignment to finish. Okay, like, I keep saying, okay, like, it's making me cringe. Like, I just keep saying it, like, stop,
Like an
bitch.
okay.
Or like, okay, you know, fucking gross. What was going through your mind during those moments when you were doing your assignment and you thought, I'm done. This is sufficient. This is satisfactory. Submit.
it was a mix of I've covered everything
That you
in
think,
here.
yeah.
I've hit all the targets that I had to, I suppose, but also just being done with it.
Like,
So
emotionally,
there's-
like, I'm done.
Yeah, it's like a bit of a burnout. Like, I've done this now. Time to move on. There's other assignments for me to do, so
Yeah.
I'll just submit this because I've ticked all the boxes,
Yep.
covered everything they need me to cover. If it's not a 7, it's not a 7, or if it's not whatever, like a high distinction, it's fine. I know it's passable, and
Yep.
that's it.
So,
A bit of fatigue, I guess. On
yeah.
that.
And so, in terms of your projects, like, now that you've noticed you do struggle with perfectionism, like, what's the fear in that? Like, what have you noticed? Like, why do you feel like it takes you so long to start a project? What's the dialogue in your head?
That's interesting. I'm not sure. I think the reason I don't start is because it depends what the project is, but most of the time the project is something that it's not groundbreaking or new. There's a lot of people doing it already. So maybe it's a comparison with other people that are already doing it, thinking, okay, well, I have to be better than their standards. So I have to in order to compete. So say if it's something like, I don't know, something to do with entertainment or art, or I've decided to try and start streaming. So even doing that, I have to be better than other people that are already doing it, which is feels like a big hurdle to get over, a big cliff or a big project to start. And especially when it's something new, you don't know everything about it yet, or you don't know much about it. So you're like, okay, well, I have to gather all the information I need to before I begin. And I know saying that's already a trap.
That sounds a lot like imposter syndrome. Like a lot of imposter syndrome, especially like you're saying how it's already being done by other people. And so like that comparison, that feeling of like, okay, well, if I'm going to start this, so many people are doing it. If I'm going to start this, I have to have some defining feature that makes me better than these people.
Yeah.
In order for it to be a worthwhile cause. Otherwise, I just shouldn't even try it because other people are doing it already. So it's like that comparison. And then you mentioned how, you know, in the art, in that space, it's people who are talented, who are skilled. And so you're kind of thinking, well, it's already been done before. How could I possibly, you know, add to this? Actually, you made a point. You said, I need to gather as much information as I possibly can, know as much as I can before I start. And that's like that imposter syndrome where you feel like you don't know enough. And it's like, oh, I need to be fully versed on this.
Across everything. Because if you, thinking about it, if you're starting something brand new, or even if you're, you know, you have some foundations. If you look at someone who's really successful, imagine them living in like a 5-story house and you're starting with a concrete slab.
Yeah.
Hold on. I
forgot my tea. Can I bring it?
Go get your tea. I'll keep talking.
Holy shit.
Tasha's hearing me from the other room. If you're starting with a foundation and someone's got a 5-story house, there's just something about, well, why am I going to start living in this? This is a weird comparison. Why am I going to start living in this now? I should build the foundation. I should work my way up before I go out into... This doesn't really work I'm trying to say that if someone's on a mountain of information and they've gathered all of this stuff and they know how to do... They're already doing it and they know how to do all of this.
Yeah.
You're distracting me by laughing at me.
Well, I'm not laughing at you.
But no... I don't... Yeah, you're laughing alongside me.
Hand in hand.
Hand in hand.
Skipping down the road.
Skipping down the road to a field. Chuckling together. I'm trying to say if someone has a well-established business, information, whatever, and you're starting from the very bottom floor, it's like it's like an unfair fight from the beginning. So you want to do all the training, I guess, that you can, so you're just as experienced as them, so that you can compete with them. And that's the downfall, is that there's no way that you can do that. When they started, they were where you were. So it's...
Well, this is the thing. We compare our starting journey
to where someone is.
To where someone is already. We compare when we're starting to someone... Oh, hold on. We compare ourselves... Wait.
Metaphor gang. Really, like level 1 metaphors here. We cannot...
We compare our starting point to our ideal destination. So someone's at our ideal destination, we're like, I want that. How do they get there? I want to be where they are. But we don't realize that they also started somewhere. And they also probably started where we started. And so we immediately... Does that make sense? You're fucking yawning. Is it boring? Am I boring you?
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm going to take my Invisalign out. So, with that kind of identified, I just want to make a point about perfectionism. Wait, are you done with what you were saying?
With that identified. Well, I don't even know if
what do you mean?
I don't even know if whatever point I was trying to make and whatever point you were just trying to make to help me came through.
What do you mean? I actually don't remember your metaphor about the mountains.
Because I never finished it, because I don't think I could make sense. I was just saying, it's similar to what you were saying. You're comparing so you're starting this brand new thing, and you're looking at your competition, or you're looking at people that are in the same field as you that are really successful.
Yep.
And you're put off by that because you're like, oh my gosh, they're already there, and I'm down the bottom. How can I
get there? Possibly
compete in this market or whatever it is against these titans of industry or these people who are doing so well? My instinct in that situation is to go, okay, well, before I go public or whatever, before I launch this project, I will gather as much information as I can so that I can build this framework that looks like, if they're in a house, that looks like their house, and then launch, and it like, oh look, I'm as successful as they are because I know as much as they do. But that it's flawed by design, because they started they went public at the bottom, and through just doing it, gathered, they built their success
Like,
there.
exactly. And so I did understand what you meant.
Well-
You know, I did understand because, and the other point we just said is they went public and then they learnt through that experience. You learn better when you try and fail and try again and fail than you ever do when you sit in that theoretical mindset of like, this is what I would do, this is what I would do. It's like embodiment.
Yeah, it's
the concept of like actually putting into practice the things that you need to, and being able to fail and try again. And that's so much easier said than done. Like even me now,
course, yeah.
I'm sitting here intellectualizing this, being like, that's not what I need to do. But why can't I get up and dance and like learn that dance and then fail and then
Yeah.
cry and then get up again? No, I start the dance, I fail and I fucking cry and I give up instantly.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
like, that's one of my biggest flaws, is that I don't have that persistence because it's rooted in the perfectionism, it's rooted in the procrastination, it's rooted in the imposter syndrome. These all combine together.
Yeah.
They're all
It's very rare that someone starts something and they're successful straight away, which is what you're hoping to do when you're in the space that we're talking about. Is that you're hoping that you just start and become successful immediately because you've done all this prep work, whereas no one does that. Most success stories you hear are people starting some business, it fails, starting another business, it fails, starting this other business and building these connections, and then it grows and it does well. Like
And
most
like you said,
CEOs that exist.
There is still merit to researching and being well informed on whatever it is that you want to start before you start it. Like, you don't want to go in blindly being like, I'm going to fail and make mistakes and I'm going to be okay. No, because you're going to struggle. Like, especially if it's a financial decision, like, you're just going to fucking go all into a business without knowing how business works, without knowing how that works.
Yeah, there's some degree of planning that you need.
There's some degree of planning that you need, but you do at some point when you do at some point need to think about the fact that, okay, I know enough for this to be a starting point to get into this thing.
Yeah.
It's like, and for something like, this is more relating to something like business or starting a massive project. If it's something like art or like getting back into drawing or dancing or singing, it's just like, okay, all I need is that I want to do it. And is there any risks involved? What's the risks? Like,
exactly.
Am I going to pop a blood vessel? Be a bit careful, like, you know.
I'm going to break my pencil when I do a drawing.
Yeah, you know, sharpen it. So it's like those types of things. I think we look at the what ifs too much and like get too concerned. So the whole, like, look at this as like a whole interconnected sort of situation. All of these different terminologies that we're using, like perfectionism, procrastination, imposter syndrome, comparison. There's like pros and cons to all of them, and sometimes, more often than not, they all work together.
Yeah.
Perfectionism and all of these traits are rooted in the feeling of not being good enough. It's a coping mechanism from, like, if I was to, like, I just want to go down the road of talking about it from like a trauma perspective. What are these traits? What is perfectionism? What is procrastination? What is imposter syndrome? These are all coping mechanisms and adaptations that we develop over the course of our life based on the experiences that we've had. Mm-hmm. And so you see a lot that people who develop perfectionism often were around parents or adults in their younger years who also modeled that behavior. So nothing was good enough for them. They had really high expectations, maybe of themselves and maybe of you. Like, we see this a lot in high achieving kids whose parents praise them for their intelligence or their skills or their talent, you know, and like the gifted kids. And those gifted kids, sort of their whole identity revolves around, I'm good because of this and what I can do, my achievements and my performance. Yeah. And so they grow up with this need to constantly be performing at that standard. And that can snowball really bad because your life changes, your interests change. And when you have people who you sort of grow up, I suppose, with this belief that people want you to be perfect, and that if you aren't perfect or aren't doing things as well as, you know, people want you to, that you're not going to be accepted, you're not going to be loved, people are going to leave you or neglect you or think that you're not good enough. And
exactly,
so I think this is very much rooted in childhood trauma or just childhood experiences of your identity and your worth being attached to your output or your performance or what you can do, what you can offer. And then it really depends on the adults in your life, how they modeled that to you. Did you get in trouble if you didn't do as well as you did previously.
Yeah.
You know, those types of things where they have really high expectations of you. I know this is really common in brown culture because, like, traditionally, like, brown kids do be going through some shit when it comes to, like, their parents saying you have to be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer or nothing, or you go on the street and you go and you're not my son, you're not my daughter anymore,
Not my beta.
you're not my beta nor my beti.
Yeah.
And, like, that's just so rooted in, like, I think children of immigrants and, like, just brown kids in general, regardless of where they grew up. Like, that's a whole other topic. But that, you know, you see that a lot in those types of people. Anyway, so that's just what I wanted to say, because I wanted to talk about, I suppose, where perfectionism comes from.
Yeah,
Why
exactly.
do we develop it? Why do so many of us struggle with this?
Yeah, it's a mix of how you grew up, cultural things.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, your childhood and culture play a huge role in that. And then obviously the people you surround yourself with.
Where do you think your perfectionism came from? Or where do you think these, you know, we're talking about a few traits now, like perfectionism.
Yeah.
Or where do you think they came from? Like,
I don't know. It's hard because it's for me, it's something that I'm only really just discovering that
you haven't gone
I
that
struggle
far.
with. I haven't really gone that far. I think it stems from fear of failure, I suppose. Mm-hmm. But that's where a lot of perfectionism
Are
comes
you hearing
from.
the clicks?
Definitely hearing the clicks.
Fear
I can
of
see that.
failure. Fear of failure. That is literally what it's all about.
Yeah.
Here to the nail on the head.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's where it came from. I don't know if I have a history of failing things in my childhood, in my past, where I was scolded for failing. I don't remember that. I don't remember my parents being, like, upset with me that I didn't do well at something.
Me neither.
I don't know if maybe it's a cultural thing in terms of where we grew up. I'm just brainstorming, like, thinking of tall poppy syndrome and things. Like, if you go out of your way to stand out and try and achieve something, and then you can be... I guess this stems more in the fear of failure. If you try to do something, try to be something, you can cop a lot of flack for that, just trying to get out there and do something new and be successful. And if you fail at that as well, not only have you, like, stuck your neck out and tried to do something and everyone's made fun of you for it, if you then fail at that, then everyone was right. You just proved them all right, in quotes, and they can then give you even more shit for, like, haha, you tried and failed, haha.
That is such a good point.
Down in the fucking dirt. I don't know if that fits perfectionism as much, but it definitely fits the fear of failure, which stems
all
into
interlinked.
this.
I think it's so hard for us to, like, stick to one topic because they're all interlinked. And tall poppy syndrome, holy fuck, like, Australia is riddled with tall poppy syndrome, and we wanted to do an episode on, like, this specifically.
We did, exactly,
because,
yeah.
God, it's toxic, and it's not just Australia. I notice it a lot in brown culture too. Oh my God, like, it's a lot in brown culture. I hear it with my family, and they say stuff like, just things that you're like,
yeah,
oh my God, like, be happy for someone, like, well, it's not gonna hurt you.
Yeah, exactly. If someone gets good news, like, people always have to, I don't know, come up with something to
downplay it, to
to
diminish their achievements, to
Yeah.
diminish them. And I think it's rooted in a scarcity mindset, and it's rooted in, like, the poverty mindset. So if you think about Australia, like, well, people have actually said that it's common in Australia and New Zealand because we're very isolated countries, and so we don't really have connections to other countries and trades, and you would speak better about this, like, you know, spices and things like
what, exports and trades and
yeah,
things.
you know, like, we're not, like,
What makes Australia isolated?
no, like, that's what makes us isolated, because we haven't had, firstly, we're a new country because fucking
Yeah, globally speaking, in terms of, yeah, we are.
Oh, by the way, when I say new country, I mean, like, colonized Australia.
Yeah.
Just
The
for
one
that.
that fits into, like, the global...
And we probably should have done this at the
new
start
world.
of our podcast, but we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, of which we are sitting and speaking and having the privilege to live on. And we pay our respects to the elders past, present, and future.
Past, present, and emerging.
And we pay our respects to the elders past, present, and emerging.
Yeah.
So I think it's, like, rooted in scarcity mindset and poverty mindset because, yeah, in brown culture as well, I wonder if it's got to do... I just wonder if it's got, like, links to that because, you know, Desi culture or brown culture, South Asian culture, yes, they were a rich country. Like, they were a rich country. South Asia was a rich country. I mean, like, the South Asian countries were... Oh my God, I can't even, like, confidently say this because I know nothing about history. All I know is, like, India. All I know is, like, people like India. I only know about Bindia because I don't know about the others. Bindia was a rich wealthy, flourishing country before colonization. There was like multiple colonization, wasn't there? Like the Mughal like empire, which is when they converted all the people to Islam, and then there was the British colonization.
Yeah, there's probably a bunch of others that have happened. I mean,
anyways,
those are the major ones.
When they went downhill, in the same way that Australia went downhill, in the sense like when I say Australia went downhill, I mean like when old mate came and like founded the country. Yes, he founded it. Amazing, good job, lad. Like you went and committed genocide. But I'm talking about the fact that Australia's really far away, so they weren't involved with trades with the rest of the world. Cut me off, help me out.
I'm waiting. I'm trying to hear what you're saying.
I'm just saying that like tall poppy syndrome is rooted in scarcity and poverty mindset because India lost because India lost their riches, and then so now they're like very careful and scared, and they don't want anyone else to succeed. Oh my god, no, hold on, let me start again. The tall poppy syndrome is rooted in scarcity/poverty mindset. Why? Because when we live in a scarcity mindset, we believe that if someone else achieves success, that means that we cannot. It is a direct threat to our survival. It's a direct threat to our, wealth and success. Yes, of course.
Because in a scarcity mindset, you think resources are limited. So if someone is succeeding, they're getting more. If they succeed, that means I can't.
Yeah,
so
they
have to stay down here with me, so we can share this scarce resource is not actually what
really
it is.
Well explained.
If they succeed, it doesn't affect you in terms of like, you're not now. It's not like, oh, now I can't succeed because they've jumped out of the hole that we were sharing. No, you can do the same. You can climb out of that hole as well.
Well, this brings me back to like a little point we were talking about before when you were talking about comparison.
Yeah.
And how we compare and we think, oh, well, someone's already done it, so I can't, it's already been done. Like, that market's saturated and it's done.
Yeah.
Like, there's healthy comparison and unhealthy comparison. Unhealthy comparison is when you look at what someone else is doing, seeing their success, and feeling that you cannot achieve the same because it's already been done before, you're not good enough, or, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Or you can look at it and be like, fuck yeah, it's been done before. That means, like someone's already paved the way.
Yeah, exactly.
There's people who can give me guidance. It's possible. I don't have to. I'm not the first person venturing into these lands.
Exactly.
If anything, that you can switch that mindset into like, this is so empowering because I don't need to figure out if this is possible. I can see that it's possible. I'm seeing it.
Yeah.
And it's such a powerful mindset shift because it genuinely just has to do with how you view or how you perceive that. And this, back onto trauma, like when you've experienced a lot of trauma, you view the world as a cruel place. You view it as a scary place, as an unfair place, as an unjust place. So your entire lens is clouded and shady, clouded by that judgment and that trauma. Mm. So yes, it's an easy mindset shift, but it's important to note that it's not as easy as we say it is, like right now. Yeah. If you've experienced, quite a significant trauma, you might not be able to switch your mindset like that.
Yeah, it's not like flicking a switch. Like the thought process in terms of like, think of it like this.
Intellectually,
change your thinking from this to this is a simple idea. The process is obviously much harder, and remembering to do that and see life through that lens is the difficult part.
And everyone has their own, like, you know what I mean? Like every person is on their own journey as to how they would achieve positive mindset shifts and how well they can do. Does that make sense? Yeah, how well they can do it because someone has experienced a lot of trauma, like different roadblocks. Yeah, and people who've experienced quite a bit of trauma have. What am I trying to say? I had a really good point that I wanted to say.
Have like more fog to see through.
Yeah, have more. I love these metaphors. Have more fog to see through. Yeah, but also like it's like you said, it's very, very much rooted in their subconscious being that they believe that all these negative things about themselves that so deeply becomes like a core part of their identity, and they have to unravel and unpack it like deeply, like dig to the bottom of the core of the earth.
Yeah, a lot more inner work for them to do. Yeah. Whereas someone who like had a normal, not normal, like a healthy upbringing, and didn't face a lot of issues. This is that's not so much of a hard task for them.
As much, exactly.
I guess that's an issue on like privilege as well.
Oh, check your privilege.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just reading because I feel like I like the way this conversation is going because it's like very flowy.
We're very zigzagging all over the place, but
I think
that's
fine.
Part of the point. That's the whole thing.
The point of the Thinking Out Loud podcast was that we wanted to just have real, honest conversations about topics, unfiltered. So it's not like we're going from it's not very structured. Although I think it was exact, I honestly believe every single element that we've spoken about is connected. All the terms, tall poppy syndrome, imposter syndrome, comparison traps,
they all play
scarcity
a role.
mindset. It's so connected. It's so fascinating. I love it. You have written here that you came up with something about perfectionism around how to, I suppose, manage it.
How to deal with it. How to...
Wait! No! And so you wrote this little saying. And what it is... No, like, you came up with this. So you came up with this.
She's tapping a book right now that I wrote on.
You came up with this thing around, I suppose, the next step in our perfectionism conversation around how to... I don't want to say deal with it, because that's what the fucking first thing is called.
Okay, well, I don't know what you're trying to say right now. So what do you mean you don't want to say deal with it?
Deal with it, because then I'm going to say you have... okay, so you came up with a little framework. I want to call it like a little framework, because it looks like a framework. It's kind of like a step-by-step process. Not like a step-by-step, but more just...
Type A person.
What?
I said...
What?
I said type A person because I set up the framework.
Okay.
You're clipping the audio. We're watching the audio go by as well. And
oh my god, you don't have to say that. You don't have to say what I'm doing.
I'm just giving people a peek behind the curtain.
Oh my glob.
So, what the hell are you trying to say?
Okay, now for the next part, I just want to point out something that you wrote, because you came up with a bit of a framework on perfectionism. And it just came to you, and I really like it, and I'm going to say it. So it's, number 1, deal with it. Number 2, overcome it. Number 3, utilize it. Now, I want you to talk about it.
Okay.
So what is this framework? What does it mean? And what does it relate to?
Well, it relates to perfectionism.
Oh, nice.
What does it mean? Well, these were I just wrote these. I actually didn't even write these. This is Tesh's handwriting, but I thought of these and told her to write them. Deal with it. So this is essentially how to deal with it. So part of this is being aware of your perfectionism. So knowing what perfectionism is, getting curious about it. So it's, we've written here being aware. So the whole point is you should know where your tendencies are, and you should know where your tendencies are.
What are you laughing at?
I'm just laughing. I'm trying to word this. I mean, this feels like... So,
getting
curious and being aware. Those are the two little subheadings we have under deal with it. It's important to, first of all, know what perfectionism is in order to actually deal with it. So, you want to get curious about perfectionism. You want to know, okay, well, how is this related to me? How am I suffering from perfectionism, and where is it stopping me in my life and roadblocking me?
How do you...
I think informing yourself about it is the first step to dealing with it. Then we have overcoming it. So you want to find the parts of perfectionism that aren't serving you. So I don't know if we've said it so far during this episode, but I don't know if you can ever really get rid of your perfectionism, because you still hold yourself to certain standards. You still will compare yourself to other people. This is all just part of your human experience. So finding the parts of your perfectionism that aren't serving you is essentially for me as an example, elements of perfectionism that aren't serving me are not even I won't even start projects because I need to be perfect at something before I even begin. That is not serving me because I'm not starting anything. Because you can't be perfect at something before you begin doing it. You can't even be good at something if you don't start doing it.
Exactly.
So knowing what perfectionism is, and then knowing where it isn't serving you, is how you can overcome it. Yeah. And then I have utilize it. So you can channel that perfectionist in you.
The tendencies.
Those tendencies, harness those and utilize them into something more constructive. So, using myself as an example again, if I can use a lot of energy and time to put in all this research and put in all this work to be really good at something before I even begin? Can I not channel that same energy into, instead of, obviously, like we've said earlier, doing research is still important, but if I can channel this energy into doing this thing and getting better as I do it, and channel that, I'm not going to start till I'm good at this, I'm not going to start till I'm good at this, channeling that same sort of level of standard into actually doing the thing and knowing, okay, I'm getting better at doing this and getting better at doing this. I think that's essentially how I say you should utilize it. Utilize those high standards.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, like, having high standards is a good thing. It means you want to perform well. You want to achieve high success. You know, you have high standards.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between unrealistically high standards and realistic high standards. And so, like you said, you know, channeling that energy into, like, endeavors where you need attention to detail. So, like, you know, art or creative things or problem solving, or, you know, starting things where you feel like that attention to detail is needed. But it's not needed in everything. Like, if you're cooking a meal and you're like, this is just a quick weeknight meal, and you're like, oh, it's not good enough, I need to, and you keep, like, adding more ingredients to it to try and make it perfect, you're going to spoil it.
Yeah.
And so kind of identifying where it's helpful and where it's not. And like you said, you know, just starting and, like, learning through that experience.
Exactly,
And I think also, just, you know, yes, perfectionism has a lot of negative side effects, but it also means that, it means that you can also channel that energy into having a growth mindset and wanting to improve.
Yeah.
Because there's also not so good things about not having high standards, because it means that you kind of believe that you're not worthy of achieving good things or doing good things. You're not capable of it.
So I think a good point, this probably doesn't apply in all cases, but in most cases of perfectionism, there is something. If you're a perfectionist with something, you're probably passionate about that thing.
Yep.
So if you've got passion in something, that is amazing, and that is, you can channel that passion into actually, you know, improving on that thing. So exactly. It's good. I think art is a good example, because, or just any sort of skill, like the whole saying around, you need to be perfect or a master at something, you have to have 10,000 hours in it. You, like, having that passion in something and just starting it, so just starting to draw, or just starting to dance, or starting to sing, or play an instrument, or cook, or whatever. You're not going to be perfect at the start, but channeling that passion and that perfectionist in you, you can utilize that to improve on those things and to become better at it.
Yeah, I agree. You said before that you don't think that you can, like, fully get rid of perfectionism.
Yeah.
That's, like, interesting, because it so depends on how you... I'm getting to the point where I'm thinking, like, it so depends on how you actually define perfectionism. Because it's, you know, on one hand we're saying it's bad and you want to overcome it, and then we're saying, oh, but perfectionist tendencies are also good. But are we just saying that having high standards for things are good? Is perfectionism ever good? I feel like perfectionism... Something vibrating? Oh no. Perfectionism in and of itself can never be a helpful thing, but having... Oh, I don't know.
It's getting into a bit of semantics. It's a bit of a grey area. Because...
I'll stop.
Because, well, yeah, just going back, I guess...
It's getting too complex.
It gets quite complex there when you think of it. So perfectionist tendencies, I guess, is just common language I was using to describe the point. But I suppose, it's an interesting question. Is perfectionism ever good? Is it a good thing?
Let's ask ChatGPT.
That's the whole point of this, I guess, episode.
Is perfectionism ever good? ChatGPT. Perfectionism, like many traits, exists on a spectrum, and its effects can vary depending on how it's expressed and managed. In some cases, perfectionism can be beneficial, leading to high achievement, attention to detail, and excellence in work or creative endeavours. Here are some ways perfectionism can be considered good. 1. Motivation for excellence. 2. Attention to detail. 3. Innovation and creativity. 4. Quality control. And 5. Personal growth. That's so basic. That's basically what we've been talking about. But yeah, like, motivation for excellence, that's a really good point. That's the first one where you said you were, like, passionate. If you're passionate... Yeah,
if you're a perfectionist about something, you're probably passionate.
And that's a really powerful thing to have, passion.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't have purpose and passion in their life. And we feel lost and we feel like we don't know what we want to do and we kind of feel indifferent about most things. And I would argue that that's fucking worse.
Then what?
Than being a perfectionist.
Well, yeah, I guess so. That's another topic entirely, I think.
Oh my god, why are you trying to gatekeep me?
I'm not trying to gatekeep you.
Every time I say something, you say, that's another topic, or we're zigzagging into another topic.
I'm not saying it was zigzagging. I'm just saying...
What if I just want free will?
Now... You've got free will. Do you want to talk about it?
No, it's fine.
No, let's talk about it.
No, it's fine.
So, someone not being passionate about something...
Is lame.
Is lame.
Loser.
Yeah, it is lame. But now we're saying... Oh, I'd rather be a perfectionist than that.
Well,
so it just feels like bad territory to get into.
Yeah, fair. Okay. I'm not saying it's better. I'm just saying, like, I just think... I don't know.
It's like giving an excuse to someone. Like, if you're, like, it's like, that's something a perfectionist would say to be like, at least I'm not fucking...
Yeah, at least I'm not a fucking loser. Yeah, fair. At least I'm not a fucking loser who doesn't want to do anything in my life. Lazy piece of shit.
Yeah. Let me restart my PowerPoint presentation for the 10th time.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to eat pasta now?
I want to eat pasta now.
Thank you so much for joining us for the first official episode of
the
Thinking
Out
Loud
podcast.
We are
Episode
your hosts, Tesh,
George,
and we really enjoyed this. Oh, I did.
I enjoyed it too.
I feel like it was really nice. We've been sitting here for like an hour chatting, and it's actually wild because I think it's a really nice meditation exercise because I've not been using my phone. Sometimes when we're talking, I'd be using my phone, dog. I'd be doing shit.
We've just been looking at each other.
We're just looking at each other. Eye contact. It's date night.
Date night. It is date night. That's why we have some nice pasta that Tesh made.
Yeah, it was really good.
We're going to enjoy that, and we're going to watch a movie.
Wait, are we watching a movie or are we going to watch Heartbreak High?
Oh, I don't know. We'll decide.
Okay.
We'll take this offline.
All right, we'll take this offline. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We had a really great time. I hope you had a really great time too.
Yeah.
We spoke about perfectionism, imposter syndrome, comparison trap, tall poppy syndrome, and we'd really like to talk to you about it again maybe next time.
We'd like to hear your thoughts as well. If you've got anything you want to say about this particular episode.
Oh yeah, absolutely, love. And look, if there's anything else you'd really like for us to talk about, we'd really love it if you send some messages through, some ideas, you know, some suggestions. I would really appreciate that, wouldn't you, George?
I'd really bloody appreciate that too. I really, really would.
I'm 90 years old.
You fucking sound it.
What about you?
I'm 68.
Oh, well, you got a bit of Alzheimer's there, then you can't fucking remember how old you are. It took you that long. Jesus, I'm quite sharp in the brain then, haven't I?
You're fucking sharp in the brain.
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna go now and eat some pasta, so... Thank you so much for joining us. What the actual fuck was that? I love that. I did a really good job.
You did a really good job. I was actually impressed.
Were you impressed? My brain was like going.
Oh no.
Okay, it's getting too chaotic.
Mamma mia.
Mamma pizzeria.
Okay. Anyway.
We have to go.
Yeah, this has been a very long goodbye. We're going to go eat pasta. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope to hear you. We hope to hear from you and see you again soon because we want to record more of these. It was great fun. Love you guys so much.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.